What an exciting day this has been for me and for the Emerson family. This afternoon, as many of you know, I presented my credentials to President Gauck. We had a very interesting discussion. In fact, I think his staff was getting a little nervous as the clock ticked past 25, 30, 35, 40 minutes because they had someone else waiting, apparently. The president, like my father and grandfather, was a pastor. And so that was interesting. We had a very enjoyable, wide-ranging, almost philosophical conversation, which was tremendous. I also want to thank you, Friedrich, for commenting upon the fact that I speak German. I will tell you, I took it in high school and college. I understand a lot more than I can articulate. My line is, ich habe mehr Deutsch vergessen, als ich gelernt habe. But I'm going to try to get started here with a little bit of Deutsch, so bear with me. Meine Damen und Herren. Meine Frau Kimberly und ich sind besonders stolz, diesen Abschnitt unseres Lebens mit Ihnen von der Atlantik-Brücke zu beginnen. Jim Melville hat uns begeistert von der guten Zusammenarbeit berichtet. Auf dieser guten Arbeit möchten wir aufbauen. Und zwar so weit möglich auf Deutsch. Hoffentlich nehmen Sie es mir dennoch nicht übel, wenn ich gleich auf English fortfahre. You'll hear more as the time goes on, believe me. My family and I have been preparing for this assignment for a number of months, and we are extraordinarily happy to finally be here in Berlin. Kimberly and I are accompanied, as you heard earlier, by our three daughters who are now filming this from the back here. You were introduced at... Welcome to my world, folks. Friedrich introduced you to them, but just to give you a little bit more specific, Jackie, the oldest, will be leaving in about 2 weeks to begin her studies at Stanford University as a freshman. And she will be majoring in Mandarin Chinese and East Asian studies, and is also a film actress and a singer and a songwriter. Taylor and Haley, who are soccer players, foosball, and will try to help introduce more of lacrosse to Berlin as well, will be starting 11th grade. In fact, they just started on Thursday at BBIS. And the five of us actually visited Berlin. Oh, yeah, give them a round of applause. The five of us actually visited Berlin several years ago, and we've just been having so much fun over the past 10 days rediscovering this fascinating and historically important city. And we just can't wait to get out and see the rest of the country and be with so many of you who were gracious enough, by the way, and I want to thank you for that, to come in here tonight for this dinner. I also bring you the fond regards of our dear, dear friends, Phil and Tammy Murphy. Candidly, I wish Phil had been a worse ambassador. I mean, what an act to follow. Phil, couldn't he, screwed up a little bit? Come on. But he was great, and I'm glad he was great for our country and for Germany. Phil spoke to you here for the first time as ambassador, and I heard the weather was terrible. By the way, glad we could bring the California weather. My guess is you won't be thanking me for that in February. But in any event, Phil spoke as ambassador almost 4 years ago. And I know that he joined you on many subsequent occasions. But on that first evening, he recalled another Atlantik-Brücke event in honor of the then newly credentialed ambassador, Richard Holbrooke. That dinner took place 20 years ago in the fall of 1993. All present were inspired by the strength, of the new ambassador's commitment and the breadth of his vision. I share those feelings about Dick Holbrooke. In fact, I was privileged to be part of the Oval Office discussion when President Clinton decided to nominate him to be the ambassador to the Federal Republic of Germany. And it is an even greater privilege for me to follow or try to follow in his footsteps and the footsteps of his extraordinary successors. It is also a joy to be a part of this wonderful Atlantik-Brücke tradition, and I guarantee you, as Phil told me, I will tell my successor that this is where he needs to spend his first day after he presents his credentials, or her, to President Gauck. Like Ambassadors Holbrooke and Murphy, I am committed to strengthening the German-American partnership. Although I grew up in New York, and Kimberly and I worked in D.C. Kimberly's actually an L.A. native, but worked in D.C. during the 1990s. California has been our family home for well over 3 decades. We promise to bring a different West Coast brand of energy and orientation towards the future to our work here at the Embassy and to our cooperation with this organization and to other strong partners here in Berlin and throughout this country. Both Kimberly and I have deep German family roots, and it is a deep honor to serve as ambassador here. As I said at my Senate confirmation a little bit earlier, at the age of 12, I began to study German. Now, my folks thought it was because I wanted to become a scientist, but the real reason probably had more to do with the fact that my father and grandmother would speak German to one another when they didn't want me to know what they were talking about. While my German may be rusty today, I plan to work hard so that I will be better able to hear what you have to say so I can learn from all of your perspectives. Based upon my experience in government and in civic and private sector initiatives, I know that the strongest partnerships are built on exactly the kind of solid foundation that together Germany and the United States have established over the past 6+ decades. The track record of German-American and transatlantic cooperation speaks for itself. It is the cornerstone of global security and prosperity. As President Obama said here in Berlin last June, Europe is America's partner in almost everything that we do. He was not just referring to the way that governments work together. He was also referring to the way that businesses and universities and research organizations work together. He was referring to the strong people-to-people connections that were established and nurtured and developed during the 20th century. And President Obama noted the very basic fact that all of these facets of the transatlantic relationship can now be channeled to address the very different challenges that the world faces today. Ours is a partnership based on common values and common ideals and also common action. Think about it. Our partnership has transitioned from one with an almost singular focus on the very real security challenges and threats defined by the parameters of the Cold War to a broader, more encompassing relationship. I first came to Berlin just after college in the 1970s to visit a former professor who at the time was I believe, the founding executive director of the Aspen Institute, Berlin, Michael Halsell. Some of you may recall him or know him. I will never forget seeing that wall, imposing and gray. That powerful singular symbol of those times served as a metaphor for the black and white and gray relations of the Cold War. I returned a decade or so later to take part in a Young Leaders Exchange organized by the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. There were signs then that things were beginning to change. That gray wall was covered with vibrant, colorful graffiti. Today, as we all know, the wall has been reduced to a thin brick line running through the streets of Berlin. The vibrant signs of our partnership are everywhere throughout this reunified city and country. And that single note of shared national security has grown into a symphony of cooperation across political and economic and cultural spheres. People call the United States the indispensable nation. Yet, from the new roles that NATO has embraced, to the engagement of the transatlantic partners in Afghanistan and Kosovo, to the developments in the broader Middle East, to our partnership in humanitarian and development efforts around the world, to our efforts to keep our citizens safe from the very real threats posed by terrorism, it is the close cooperation between our two countries that is indispensable. Our views are complementary, which is not to say that they always coincide. Of course, there are sometimes differences of opinion across the Atlantic, just as there are differences of opinion within the United States, within Germany, within Europe. And at this particular time, there is certainly a very large elephant in the room, and that is the NSA story. As I stated in my Senate confirmation hearings, I intend to listen and to engage with government officials, political leaders, and the German people on this topic. There is one underlying message. We need to work together to combat terrorism in order to keep our countries and our citizens safe. And we need to do it in a way that reflects our shared respect for the rule of law. You can be assured that the vital, ongoing cooperation between our security agencies will continue. And it's important to remember that, as Foreign Minister Westervelle has said again today, the United States is a parliamentary democracy with an independent judiciary. And he reiterated the importance of our partnership, a strategic partnership based on common values. The fact is, our intelligence agencies operate under the oversight of all three branches of the American government. The recent allegations have engendered vigorous public discussion, not only within Germany, but also within the United States, regarding our efforts to achieve the right balance between freedom and privacy and security. These discussions will obviously continue for quite some time. But in light of yesterday's news stories, let's step back for a minute. I think we can assume that this pattern of leaks to Der Spiegel and other news organizations may well also continue over time. Every time this happens, we have a choice. We can either stop in our tracks, wring our collective hands, and put a hold on all the other critical work we are doing together, or we can move steadily forward on all fronts, including this one, simultaneously. I strongly urge this latter course. The important point to remember is that our worldviews are complementary. We share the same values, we share the same goals, and we are indeed working on policies to achieve those goals together.